Hello, my name is Sam Feltham and welcome to Expert Interviews here on Smash the Fat. And we have somebody that's literally halfway around the globe. You couldn't get any further away from London than where this woman is today. It's Senior Lecturer at Auckland University of Technology, Dr. Caryn Zinn. How are you doing, Caryn?
I'm great, thank you, Sam. How are you doing?
Very good. All the better for seeing you. As we were kind of talking about before, New Zealand is almost like a second home to me. I did 3 winters there, did a lot of traveling there, and it's an absolutely magical country. But for those that kind of actually have an inclination for accents, yours isn't exactly a New Zealand accent. It's actually a South African accent. So before we get into today's subject, which is low carb, high healthy fat in practice, can you tell us a bit about what your journey has been from kind of, your school days to where you are today?
Yep, great. I was going to start off by telling you how many years my accent has been South African and the other how many years it's been New Zealand, but that is so silly, it's going to give away my age, and I'm not going to do that. But I've got a bit of a half-half blend. So I trained as a dietitian in Cape Town, South Africa, and I then moved to New Zealand. I moved to the top of North Island to a little place called Whangarei, where I worked as a public health dietitian, and then after about 4 years, I moved to Auckland to take up a teaching and research position at AUT, which is Auckland University of Technology. Well done in getting that right. And I've been there. I've been there ever since, doing what I do best: teach, research, and consult. And I guess for my entire career, bar the last 2.5 years, I've been very, very loyal to the good old food pyramid, where we find lots of packaged and processed things that have got lots of carbohydrate in and very little fat in it. And so I've been very, very loyal to that up until recently. So yeah, that was the next part of my journey, if you like.
Yeah, because it was quite interesting because watching all of your lectures, it was quite interesting to hear that you used to be more of a low fat advocate, and you are a New Zealand registered dietitian.
That's right.
But just over the past 2.5 years, there's been a complete transition for you from kind of purely advocating low fat to kind of going more towards a low carb, high healthy fats, real foods diet in practice, basically. So tell us kind of how did you make that transition? What perked your ears up, and kind of what convinced you that, okay, maybe what I was doing before isn't so sound?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, and I have vivid memories of myself standing at AUT talking to the students, telling them that low carb diets were totally wrong and they were bad for you. And I distinctly remember saying that ketosis was bad for you. And I distinctly remember the lecture theatre and where I was and where I said it, and just feels with horror. And I feel like I have to write letters to all the ex-students and apologize, because I didn't know my stuff, and I guess that's what we were taught, and that differentiation between nutritional ketosis and diabetic ketoacidosis is one of the misconceptions of this whole low carb healthy fat way of thinking. But I guess like many other dietitians, very loyal to our guidelines, and I guess because we've got a practicing certificate, we are expected to practice in a way that aligns with what's considered best practice, which is our Ministry of Health guidelines. And that I did, and I'll have to say I did dabble a little bit in my practice with low carb, many years ago, but it was just by default and by trialing weird things, particularly with polycystic ovary syndrome patients. I just discovered somehow that they responded very well to low carb. But the difference is I always did low fat because of the whole link with, supposed link with saturated fat and heart disease and that whole story. So essentially I was halfway there a wee while ago, but I did low carb, low fat. So of course my clients were obviously starving.
That's asking for trouble, that is.
I know, totally. So so then I work at AET with in a research center called the Human Potential Center. And I work with.
I love that name, Caryn. I just got to say, when we had Professor Schofield on, I just love the name Human Potential Center.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Trying to reach our potential. And so Professor Schofield, or Grant, as I would call him, I work with him, and he's I mean, you've had him on before, and you know what an interesting character he is. So imagine that on a day-to-day basis. So when he gets really excited about things all the time, and it was about 2.5 years ago that we collectively sort of stumbled on some papers and some research that took the low carb, healthy fat, or at that point high fat line, and he said, "Oh, Caryn, have you seen this?" And I'd read it and I'd go, "Oh yeah, it's total nonsense. We need our whole grains for these reasons." And I really tried to say nutrition isn't your area. Stick to your area, which is physical activity, and you trained in psychology. Stick to that area, because I'm the authority. I'm the dietitian, and which is another discussion in itself. But in trying to find the flaws in these studies, I read some more, and really struggled to find the rationale to say, actually, our guidelines are grounded in robust, rigorous science. So I couldn't find that. And then everyone was self-experimenting. So of course, you got to get on the bandwagon, let's self-experiment. And then I started experimenting with my clients when I was confident that I wouldn't put them at any harm. So this might be a 5-minute conversation, but actually it was a lot of hours of reading and being convinced with myself that I'm not going to harm anyone. And of course, that went along the lines with the more contemporary view of cholesterol and saturated fat and LDL and HDL and all the things that go with that. So dabbled with my clients and found that they totally thrived with this way of eating. And I always say to people, when I was that low-fat dietitian, my clients would still lose weight. I'd be quite confident that they'd still lose weight. But they did it at the expense of being very hungry. They did it at the expense of having to exercise to a level that I don't necessarily think is healthy. And might have lost weight, some kept the weight off, right? But others would have put the weight back on, because when they, hungry and exercising to that capacity, it's not particularly sustainable. And then doing it this way, I've not only achieved weight loss in my clients, but the array of other outcomes, ranging from sleeping, you've heard it all before, sleeping better, to skin conditions going away, to reduce inflammation, all these weird and wonderful things that they were living with. And just by the way, I thought you might want to know that my knee pain has totally disappeared, and my skin issue has totally disappeared. And these were all unprompted comments that came alongside the weight loss. And then I thought, this, how can this be so wrong if I've had so many positive outcomes, and there is good science to back it up. But of course, before I changed my mind, before I launched into this public sense, I did some thorough analysis of of, you know, best practice food pyramid based diets versus whole food diets to see if they were deficient in any nutrients. Like people say, what about your B vitamins? What about the fiber? What about this? And to me, it's a no-brainer, because if you do it properly, you can actually enhance the profile of nutrients that you take in. And the fiber content, again, if you do it properly, is even better. So it was, the more I got into it, the more I was convinced that this was the right way to go. Because, of course, everyone who you've probably interviewed has a personal story to tell. You know, I was once fat and now I'm thin, or I was once had this gut issue and I now don't. Well, fortunately for me, I don't have a story. So I can eat carbohydrate and I feel fine. So I'm one of those lucky people that is metabolically well regulated. So my change in philosophy was really about something less personal, but more of a realization and a reflection of you know, practice and of research that's out there. Yeah,
that's fantastic, and that's really, really interesting. And I think that kind of says more about your ability to maybe empathize and put yourself in other people's shoes. The fact that, you know, that you're able to deal with carbohydrates, as am I, but you're able to kind of still read the science, understand it, and sort of say, look, this is clearly working for people that are in a position of metabolic damage or obesity, or polycystic ovary syndrome or anything like that, and it clearly helps them with that. And one of the things that I get kind of from your lectures is that you actually read, what was it, the New Zealand Dietitian Association's mission statement to see if it was in conflict. Is that right?
It was the code of ethics.
That's
you know, and the code of ethics. The first line is that you need to practice evidence-based dietetics or nutrition, and as far as I am concerned, this is evidence-based. It is just different evidence, but it's even more rigorous than the stuff that we've got. I mean, you know, it's just yeah, it's kind of astounding how we got to where we got to with the evidence that we had.
That's it, and why people are so against it, because as you say, the evidence for an LCHF real foods diet is more rigorous and robust than the evidence for low fat. So what do some of your peers say that are still kind of more towards the low fat advocacy bench?
They say things that I should probably not repeat on this podcast. No, I'm only kidding. You know, I'm getting some good support, and I'm getting some not so good support, to say the least. And the interesting thing is that there are actually a reasonable amount of dietitians that are out there that are practicing this way, but don't really want to make a noise about it, because there are consequences. You know, we have to apply for our practicing certificate every year, and you know, sometimes if you're not seen to be towing the line, it can be troublesome, and it has been troublesome. I think what the dietitians fail to realize, or maybe fail to acknowledge, is that I really try wherever possible in a public setting to say that the diet, I'm trying to work with the dietitians, I really am, to show them that there is some good evidence, to show them what kind of outcomes they can get, to show them the obvious link between, you know, diabetes and low carb. And I think change will come, but I know that the dietitians can be quite conservative, because I was one of them, and I would say that I was pretty conservative too. So I'm not trying to dig my heels in and make a noise because I like to be center of attention. To the contrary, I just really believe in doing it this way, because it's about whole food. Whether the carbs end up at 50, 100 or 150, it doesn't really matter. It's about whole food, and that's really where I'm trying to work with the dietitians. So it's trying, but I think we'll get there one way or another.
Absolutely, because yourself and Professor Grant Schofield, you guys wrote an incredible piece and sent it to the Association of Dietitians of New Zealand. Is that right?
Yeah, we've done a couple of publications. One submission to the Ministry of Health, and they're going to change the guidelines. So we're still waiting to hear what's going on with the change of guidelines. And the other one was to the dietitians when they put a statement on the webpage that said that there's no evidence for low carb, high fat, and we know there is. So we put together a document that shows some of this evidence, and we just want them to see the light. But of course, I really think that if it wasn't for the saturated fat issue, the whole punch up wouldn't really be happening. Wouldn't be happening, because low carb is so much more logical to get your head around, particularly when you mention insulin resistance. If you're insulin resistant, you have a problem with carbohydrate, facilitation and carbohydrate metabolism. So, that's more logical. Whereas the whole saturated fat heart disease thing is actually quite complex, and you can see where the issues arise. But I always say, if you have a problem with saturated fat, and I say this to my clients, if you have a problem with saturated fat for your own personal reasons, that's totally cool. We can still do this with different types of fat. Yeah.
Yeah, you can still kind of just put that to the side for now, just as things progress. But as you say there, kind of that's what really puts people on the back foot, and they become defensive. That low carb, high fat isn't the way to go, and you kind of changed the abbreviation to be more low carb, healthy fat, which doesn't change the actual abbreviation, but it kind of stops people from being immediately defensive. So why is it that you kind of do that?
I think that because people are so scared of fat, when you say high fat, you can see people kind of tense up. But when you say healthy fat, there's more of they'll nod and listen and yeah, go on, continue. So there's definitely a greater acceptance when you say healthy fat. And also I sometimes like to think of it as LCHF, lower carb, higher fat, because it doesn't necessarily need to be. What is the definition of low? I mean, none of us really know. There's no consensus, and it could be right down to 25 grams for the ketogenic diet, right up to 100 or even 120 or 150. There seems to be no real ceiling. But if you're eating 500 grams of carbohydrate in a day and you drop to 300, that's still potentially LC. It's lower carbohydrate, but of course, when you drop carbohydrate and protein is kept at a reasonable level, you have to eat something. So that's the fat higher, and can be quite high, for example, in the ketogenic diet again, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. People are just happier knowing the acronym healthy fat. And it's funny because I think I started using it, and I think other people started using it at the same time. And I think the good thing about that is that everyone thinks that they came up with it themselves, which is awesome.
Yeah. It's funny how everybody's kind of in sync around the world, and
totally
come up with similar things at the same time. And I guess that's kind of just mass consciousness working there, which is kind of cool,
That's right.
I mean, the thing with yourself is that you're not only just kind of teaching this, you're actually researching it and putting it into research projects within your practice. And kind of, you've got a lot of research projects going on at the moment, but one of them, which is really interesting and is kind of, a point of debate for a lot of people, is low carb kids. Kids with LCHF. So can you tell us a little bit about that research project in particular?
Yeah, the research that we're doing, we'd love to do, large scale efficacy research, but, little New Zealand, we just don't get the funding that some overseas countries do. So we have got some funding to do low carb kids. It's a feasibility study at the moment. So it's not, we don't have two groups. We've got one group, 25 families. We're still recruiting, but we've got about half of those families that have started. And it's really looking at some feasibility aspects of LCHF in kids. We're looking at acceptability of the foods. We're looking at cost effectiveness of this way of eating. We're looking at whether the family will come on board, how it goes with the kids, with the families, with the lifestyle. And yeah, we're looking at the adherence of it. So it's not a trial where we're saying these kids need to go on to 50 grams of carbohydrate and certain amounts of protein. We're not even talking calories. So it's a weight loss feasibility trial. We're not talking calories, we're not talking grams, we're just talking whole foods. So we're saying these are the foods that you should be eating, these are the foods that you should be avoiding. If you go to kids' birthdays and you have a bit of those foods, well, that's fine, but let's get back into the plan the next day. We're weighing and measuring, we're doing bloods for the kids. But also importantly, we've said to the families, look, if there's anyone in the family that wants to be measured as well, come on board, because we really think that there's no point in doing this for kids if the family is not on board. So it's really a feasibility. Kids are a pretty hard group to work with. We've got kids between the age of 8 and 13, from different demographics, which is interesting. That's why we're looking at the cost effectiveness or the cost implications of this. And then, once we get some data, we will try and then apply for a full randomized control trial. So we'll see. Awesome. It's all contestable funding, but you've got to be into it.
That's it. That's really, really interesting. Just to see if it's feasible for a family, really, because that's what it's all about. Is about if it's going to create flow in family life. Are you going to be able to sustain it? So that'd be really interesting to see kind of when those results come in. When do you expect to have finished that first pilot study?
We'll probably get some results towards the end of the year. We've had a staggered start, and the reason why we've staggered a start is because recruitment is a feasibility aspect that we try to out as well. We're recruiting via GPs at the moment. So of course, to recruit via GPs, general practitioners, they've got to be on board as well. So it's interesting, but yeah. Full set of results by the end of the year, and we've got some results rolling in at the moment. We've got some really, really good outcomes. We've got some families with barriers, but because this is a study which is really just translating the research to real practical life situations in the local context, we're giving these people as much support as we can. So we're doing weekly phone calls to have a chat. How's it going? What can we help you with? We've got a really comprehensive website. We send them recipes. It's almost like doing a consultation in a group setting for research purposes.
That's awesome. And then another interesting study that you seem to be having in the works is actually LCHF dieting for strength and power athletes trying to make weight for competition.
Yes, I've just had my master's student Simon Chatterton at AUT. He's just handed in his master's thesis, and he's looked at a group of athletes, strength athletes, and it's a great group to look at because there's not a lot of research done on this group, and also this is a group of athletes that tend to alter their body composition quite significantly leading up to competition. So it wasn't, again, it was more of a case study type research where we looked at putting them on LCHF, and we didn't go too low in carbohydrate. We looked at just over 1 gram per kilogram body weight, so it was all standardized. We told them to keep their protein where their protein normally sits, so we didn't want to compromise anything there. We didn't talk calories with them. It was, let's see, go on this way of eating and let's see how it pans out. And it's really interesting findings there. Again, looking at some feasibility aspects. Is this the kind of thing that you would do moving forward? We found no loss in strength. We found some people really like this way of eating. Some people really don't like this way of eating. And we also found something quite similar to what you found in your personal dabblings with keeping calories the same or slightly higher, and being able to decrease some body weight, whether it's water or body fat. You know, it's all up for debate, but some really interesting findings that challenge the old energy balance equation simplicity.
Fantastic. And then a final one that we'll cover is that you've got one that's kind of a bit of a blanket and very complicated, but understanding hyperinsulinemia, which is very, very complicated in itself. But what exactly are you kind of looking at there?
Yeah, so Grant and I are both supervising a PhD student, Catherine Crofts, and she's a pharmacist, pretty much sick of talking medicine and wants to get to the bottom of some of these issues. And her whole PhD is centered around trying to get a good understanding of hyperinsulinemia, so chronically elevated levels of insulin. And she has hooked up with this lovely man in the States called Joseph Kraft, and he's a 95-year-old pathologist who happily gave Catherine 14,000 cases of his life's work for her to reanalyze data. And basically it's pretty complex, but something which is quite simple about an aspect of this research is that she's found that there's a large portion of the population that has normal glucose tolerance, normal glucose homeostasis, but impaired insulin homeostasis. So basically, you can go to your doctor and you can do your glucose test, and the doctor says, yep, you're all cool, everything's fine. Your glucose is being pushed into your cells quite normally. But they don't look at insulin, and insulin might potentially be raised for a lot of people, and that's only detected somewhere down the track when they visit their doctor 10 years down the track, and oops, you've got diabetes. So I think hyperinsulinemia has been treated as a risk factor for diabetes and metabolic syndrome, but it should actually be looked at a syndrome in itself, because I think we're kind of bypassing it. So it just has huge implications. So one of the biggest problems is that to feed people glucose and to measure insulin in the blood over 3 hours or 5 hours is pretty invasive. So there's no good test to come up with. And trying to find the best and least invasive test to come up with some kind of good diagnostic and practical tool.
That's fascinating. So quite possibly the hyperinsulinemia actually precedes high blood sugar. And you need kind of a separate test for that.
Definitely. I mean, when I said it's complex, there are different craft patterns that you can get that show you the different stages. But the most worrying bit is that there's a significant proportion of the population that on paper look good in terms of glucose, but in actual fact are not good in terms of insulin. And those are the people that we're missing, that we need to get. So that, again, it has huge implications for health down the track. And we're just letting these people go.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you could kind of, give them an LCHF style diet, and they could prevent it from, moving on to type 2 diabetes and things like that. And kind of, I mean, that's really what it's about for you, isn't it?
Well, it's a logical answer, yes, but it's with trying to come up against the pharmaceutical industry is, it's rather tricky.
Yeah, very much so. And but just before we wrap things up here, with LCHF in practice, do you think that you've got a lot better results than the old way that you did things compared to now?
I think I've got a lot better results, but also different results. Like I said, it's not just about weight loss; it's about holistic health and implications. From sleep to reduced inflammation is something that I've never seen before. So there's a whole host of different results that I'm seeing. And the interesting thing is that there's a lot of demand for this. There's a lot of demand for this. And I guess it's, the types of people that often come to see me are the types that have done weight loss, done low fat. And yes, I have lost weight, but I've put it back on, or, so they want to try something different, and they're open to it. I've also managed to suggest people try that are not open to it, and they get converted because they feel better, and they reap the benefits. So yeah, definitely better in the space.
Fantastic. And thankfully, you're going to be putting all of your thoughts into a fantastically titled book called What the Fat, and that's going to be out next month.
Yep, it comes out in June, and it can be ordered online from our website, which is going live next week, which is whatthefatbook.com. And because we're such terrible business people, we're giving everything away in a book. So it's a one-stop shop for LCHF. It's a go-to guide, how to what to cook and how to cook, and then understanding the science behind it.
Fantastic. And for anyone that wants to follow all your ongoings, they can follow you on Twitter at Caryn Zinn, and that's Caryn spelled Caryn, Zinn spelled Zinn. And then I believe yes. And then you've also got a pretty prolific Facebook page as well, with I think about just over 4,000 likes there. But that's facebook.com/Caryn Zinn Dietitian. And then finally, you've got a website and blog as well, which is caryenzinn.co.nz.
Yep, that's right.
Anywhere else that you wanted to point people to?
Oh no, I mean, in this day and age, people can find me if they want to. So,
Yeah, if you just Google Caryn Zinn, and it all comes up anyway. It's beautiful, isn't it? We've got a fantastically organised society. There's no hiding from it, And there's only one more thing to do, Dr. Zinn, and that's to hear a smash it out from Dr. Caryn Zinn all the way in Auckland. So on the count of three, I want you to shout smash it out to the camera. So 1, 2, 3.
Smash it out!
That's awesome. I hope you didn't wake up anybody there. Well, it's not too late. It's kind of mid-evening there, isn't it? That's fantastic.
No, if I woke anyone up, they've gone to bed too early.
Yeah, that's right. So true South African and New Zealand grit there in your smash it out, Doc. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's greatly appreciated to get people like yourself on the show. If you're ever in London, just let me know. And hopefully I'll be heading over to New Zealand at some point. I'd love to come to the Human Potential Centre and find my potential.
You are very much welcome anytime in New Zealand, and thank you very much for having me on your show. It's been a lot of fun, actually. It's good talking to you.
I hope so. I hope so. It's fantastic, Caryn. Excellent. Well, take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
You too. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Caryn. Bye.
Bye.